Enter into a realm of fright, blacker than the darkest night. Your sanity hangs by a thread. Welcome to the House of Dread. A deal is a deal. Have you ever had a strong desire to achieve something, but lacked the talent and/or resources to manifest your vision? What would you give to see your heart's deepest desires fulfilled? Enter Albert. For Albert's entire life, all he ever wanted to do was sing. His favorite type of music to sing was rhythm and blues. Some of his all-time favorite recording artists were Teddy Pendergrass, Smokey Robinson, Barry White, and Al Green. There was just one problem. Albert couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. As a child, he would sing around the house, but his family would always tell him to shut up. As a teenager, he would participate in school talent shows, but would always get booed off the stage. As an adult, he would perform at local bars on karaoke night, with very similar and discouraging results. Albert reasoned that his voice couldn't be as bad as people were saying it was, but he thought it would be a good idea to get voice lessons to increase his chances for success. Within a week, Albert's vocal coach told him his voice was that of a dying cat, and perhaps he should consider pursuing another hobby. Poor Albert was crushed. His dreams of becoming a world-famous singer seemed to be drifting further and further away from him. Albert decided to give it one last try. In a last-ditch effort, he returned to a local karaoke bar, only to have the audience throw drinks at him just before security tossed him out on his behind. Later that night in his apartment, Albert was almost in tears. All he wanted to do was sing. Was that too much to ask? Suddenly, a huge gust of wind tore through Albert's apartment, and everything began shaking around him. His lights began to flicker, and the room continued quaking uncontrollably. Giant plumes of black smoke began rising out of the floor, and Albert, who was terrified, began trying to make a break for the door, but the smoke was so thick he couldn't see anything. Albert collapsed to the floor and started coughing. He was certain that his apartment was on fire and that he was going to die. But suddenly, the smoke dissipated, and the quaking stopped. Albert slowly opened his eyes and realized he was no longer alone. A tall figure stood before him, cloaked in shadows. The figure introduced itself as the Devil and offered to grant Albert's wish.
I am the Devil, and I have the power to grant your deepest desires. I can make you the greatest singer in the world. Would you like that?
The Devil inquired. Albert nodded in excitement, thinking of all the women that would soon be throwing themselves at him.
You'll be rich, powerful, and successful beyond your wildest dreams. No more feeling like a loser. No more getting tossed out of karaoke bars. You'll be the man other men want to be like, and the man that women want to be with.
Albert couldn't believe what he was hearing. A lifelong dream turned into reality overnight? Could it really be that simple? Albert was beyond excited, but knew there had to be a catch. After all, he was talking with the Devil.
What's in it for you?
Albert asked, with a mix of curiosity and fear. The Devil made his demands abundantly clear.
Your performances must be flawless. You must never forget your lyrics, miss a dance move, or make any other mistakes in front of a live audience. To do so would be an act of blatant disrespect to both me and my gift to you. Finally, you can never retire. You will continue to perform into old age. I will ensure that your health is sustained so long as you credit me with your success and honor the terms of our agreement.
Well, what'll happen if I don't do what you say?
Albert reluctantly asked.
It's best if you not find that out. I don't take very kindly to people who default on their agreements. But do not worry yourself about that. Focus on all the success and prosperity that you'll soon have. The money, the clothes, the cars, the $1 million mansions on the hill. No more struggling to pay your bills, and best of all, power and influence beyond your wildest imagination. So, do we have a deal?
Albert was hesitant to agree to these terms and conditions. Flawless performances, having to credit the devil with your success, and never being able to retire? Albert knew the devil's demands were totally unrealistic, but at the same time, Albert was tired of feeling like a loser. He longed for the day when he could hold his head up high and feel like he was in charge of his own life. No matter how painful the price of the devil's gift was to him, Albert agreed to the devil's terms. The devil smiled and said,
Excellent. Thank you for doing business with me. By sunrise tomorrow, you'll have a brand new singing voice, and you'll be on your way to stardom.
Suddenly there was a blinding flash of light as the devil disappeared. A few minutes later, both Albert and his apartment were completely back to normal. It was as if nothing had ever happened. Albert wondered if it had all been just a dream. To prove whether or not he was crazy, Albert decided to visit another local karaoke bar the following night. The karaoke bar was as rowdy as usual, and as he stepped on stage, Albert could feel his heart racing and his palms getting sweaty, fearing he would fumble the lyrics and that his voice would still sound like a dying cat. He wondered if his conversation with the devil had been merely a fantasy, and that he was yet again going to embarrass and humiliate himself. Albert told the DJ to cue the music, and he closed his eyes as he began to sing "I Heard It Through the Grapevine" by Marvin Gaye. Albert could not believe how smoothly the words were coming out of his mouth, and how effortless it was for him to hit each note with perfect timing and pitch. He sang with power and passion, and immediately connected with the crowd. No fear, no holding back. Not only was he impressed with his performance, but the audience was as well. For the first time in his life, Albert received a standing ovation for his singing. He almost broke down in tears as the audience clapped and cheered. Albert stepped off the stage, his heart still racing from the adrenaline rush of his performance. And as he walked back to his seat at the bar, he noticed a well-dressed man sitting a few stools down. As Albert sat down, the man turned to him and said that he really enjoyed Albert's performance. He particularly appreciated the passion and emotion Albert put into his singing. He said he had real talent. The man introduced himself as James, the owner of a local record label, and said he had been searching for someone like Albert for a long time. He assured Albert that he had what it took to make it big in the music industry. Albert was stunned. This was everything he had ever wanted, a chance to make it as a singer. He listened eagerly as James explained how he could help him record an album and get it out to the masses. Albert couldn't believe his luck. As they talked, James mentioned that he had connections with some of the biggest names in the music business. He promised that he would do everything in his power to make Albert a star. Albert felt like he was living a dream. Just a few days ago, he had been struggling to make ends meet, and now he had a record label executive sitting right next to him, offering him a chance to make it big. The deal was signed that night. Albert had never felt so excited in his life. He knew that this was just the beginning of his journey to fame and fortune. Little did he know, however, that his deal with the devil would come back to haunt him in ways he could never have imagined. 1 year later, Albert was living the high life under the stage name Big Al. He had become the world-famous R&B singer he had always dreamed of being. His name was in lights, and he was recognized everywhere he went. His lavish lifestyle was beyond anything he could have imagined. He had a fleet of luxury cars that would make even the most wealthy and famous people envious. He dressed in designer clothes from head to toe and lived in a sprawling mansion on the hill overlooking the city. The walls of his home were adorned with expensive artwork and sculptures from around the world. He had a state-of-the-art home theater, a private gym with a personal trainer, and a spa where he could indulge in massages and other pampering treatments whenever he wanted. But Albert's greatest pleasure was his bevy of gorgeous women who were always vying for his attention. He had women throwing themselves at him wherever he went. They would do anything to be close to him, and he enjoyed every moment of their company. Albert had everything he ever wanted, and knew he owed it all to the devil's deal. He had never forgotten the night he made the pact and wondered what price he would eventually have to pay. But for now, he was living the life of a superstar, and he decided to just be in the moment and disregard any pending consequences. After some time, Albert began to tire with life on the road. He just wanted to enjoy the fruits of his labor and longed for more of the quiet life that he had before becoming famous. This desire for a simpler life caused him to become neglectful in upholding his end of the bargain that he made with the devil. Albert started making careless mistakes during his live performances. This included forgetting his lyrics and his dance moves, and overall just becoming sloppy and unprofessional. He also became arrogant and took full ownership of his success and prosperity, thinking he was the cause of his extraordinary wealth and fame. Then he made the biggest mistake of all, announcing his retirement. Albert was getting older and wanted to be able to settle down and finally get off the tour bus. He recalled that the devil made it abundantly clear that Albert could never retire, but the combination of his arrogance and overall fatigue with the demanding lifestyle of an entertainer made him commit the ultimate transgression. Albert decided to organize a farewell tour to show appreciation to his fans for their support and to also solidify his exit from the stage. The tour was actually a raving success, and strange enough, the devil was nowhere to be found. Albert's voice was strong as ever, and nothing bad happened at all. Albert's confidence and arrogance reached new levels as he performed night after night without a hitch. He laughed inside as he wondered what he'd been so afraid of. Everything was perfect, just as it should have been. Then, on the night of Albert's final performance, he got a nasty surprise. The crowd roared as Albert stepped onto the stage for his final appearance. He had never felt so alive. His confidence radiated from him, and he basked in the adoration of his fans. The stage lights illuminated him, highlighting his perfectly styled hair and designer outfit. Then he grabbed the microphone and began singing his chart-topping hit song, Your Sweet Love. But something was terribly wrong.
Oh, baby! Your sweet love is all I need! Oh!
Albert's voice was cracking and screeching. He couldn't believe it. On the night of his final show, on the tour that was supposed to cement his legacy in music, he was back to sounding like a dying cat. Yes, old Albert was back. The crowd was stunned, and Albert, who didn't know what the hell was going on, retreated backstage to his dressing room, totally humiliated. Albert collapsed on the floor in terror at the thought of having to go back on stage to finish the show. He thought he had escaped the consequences of his arrogance and pride. How wrong he was. Suddenly, the devil's voice began booming from the walls of Albert's dressing room.
I thought we had a deal, Albert.
The devil said.
You've broken every rule of the agreement we've made. Haven't I given you everything you asked for? Why couldn't you honor the terms and conditions?
Albert was at a loss for words. He knew he was at fault, and now he was on the hook to finish a show for a crowd of fans that had paid their hard-earned money for a night of entertainment. He knew he couldn't let them down, lest his name be tarnished forever.
Well, how in the hell am I supposed to finish the show without my voice, man?
That's not my problem anymore,
the devil said.
All I can tell you is that you have a crowd of angry fans who will be demanding their money back if you don't get your ass on that stage right now. Best of luck, Big Al.
Albert realized he was on his own. His fear turned to anger and then into rage. How could the devil be so selfish as to abandon him on the most important night of his career? He rationalized that he didn't need the devil and that he could finish the show on his own. Once again, his arrogance flared as he made his way back to the stage, convinced that he had everything under control. At this point, the crowd was thoroughly confused, but they were trying to give Albert the benefit of a doubt, as they were eager for a great show and wondered if Albert's opening blunder was just a part of the act. Albert told his band to cue the music as he tried again.
Hey, 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 hey! Oh, baby! Your love! Your sweet love is all I need! Hey, hey, hey! Oh, good Lord, help me!
Albert sounded terrible. The crowd had finally had enough. They started booing Albert, who tried to sing through the noise of the dissatisfied crowd. Then, to everyone's shock and amazement, Albert began angrily shouting at the audience as if they were the ones in the wrong.
Hey! Y'all shut the hell up and let me finish my song, damn it!
Naturally, this made the crowd even angrier, and they went from a sea of adoring fans to an angry mob that had one thing on their mind: kicking Albert's ass. They stormed the stage like a pack of rabid dogs.
Hey, what the hell you think you're doing? Get off the stage! Get back in your seat! Hey! Hey, leave me alone! You better leave me alone! Hey! Oh!
Albert didn't know how to defend himself, and the angry mob tore him apart. They ripped the buttons off his suit, tore apart his designer shirt, and pulled out his well-styled hair. In a moment of bravery, Albert defiantly tried to fight back, but he was no match for the angry crowd, and they beat him into an unrecognizable mess. The next day, the headlines read, "Fallen R&B star Big Al beaten by angry mob during final show." The media tore Albert's name to shreds, as they speculated that he'd been scamming everybody all along. Sadly, Albert's music catalog was swiftly pulled from all record stores and streaming services. Poor Albert. All he ever wanted to do was sing. Unfortunately, he sold his soul to Satan and paid the ultimate price. Always consider what your dreams will cost you, and be willing to accept the often irreversible consequences. If you enjoyed this presentation, please consider showing your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And if you're in need of a narrator for your next project, or you just want to say hello, contact me at thehouseofdread666@gmail.com. Until the next tale of terror, this is Victor Bloodborne. Stay dreadful.